Gaur Nitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning. We're reading from Canto 10, Chapter 88, Text 21, 22, 23, and 24. So 10, 88, 21 is the one we'll be chanting together. Devam Savavre Papiyan Varam Bhuta Bhaya Vaham Yasya Yasya Karam Shrishni Dasye Samriyatam Iti Devam Savavre Papiyan Varam Bhuta Bhaya Vaham Yasya Yasya Karam Shrishni Dasye Samriyatam Iti. 1088, 21. Devam Savavre Papiyan Varam Bhuta Bhaya Vaham Yasya Yasya Karam Shrishni Dasye Samriyatam Iti. Please chant. Devam Savavre Papiyan Varam Bhuta Bhaya Vaham Yasya Yasya Karam Shrishni Dasye Samriyatam Iti. Devam Savavre Papiyan Varam Bhuta Bhaya Vaham Yasya Yasya Karam Shrishni Dasye Samriyatam Iti. Devam Savavre Papiyan Varam Bhuta Bhaya Vaham Yasya Yasya Karam Shrishni Dasye Samriyatam Iti. Thank you very much. The word for word. Devam, from the Lord. Sa, he. Vavre, chose. Papiyan, the sinful demon. Varam, a benediction. Bhuta, to all living beings. Bhaya, fear. Avaham, bringing. Yasya of whomever. Karam, my hand, Shishni, on the head, Dasye, I place, Sa, he, Mriyatam, should die, Iti, thus. And the translation, BBT translation, Sukadev Goswami continued. The benediction sinful Vrika chose from the Lord would terrify all living beings. Vrika said, quote, may death come to whomever I touch upon the head with my hand. Close quote. Text 22. Takchutva Bhagavan Rudro Durmana Iva Bharata Omiti Prahasam Tasmai Dadher Amritam Yatam. Translation. Upon hearing this, Lord Rudra seemed somewhat disturbed. Nonetheless, O descendant of Bharata, he vibrated Om to signify his assent, granting Vrika the benediction with an ironic smile, as if giving milk to a poisonous snake. Text 23. Tadvara parikshartam shambor murni kilasura svahastam datum arebe sobibiyat svakritak chiva. And the translation for text 23 is as follows. To test Lord Sambhu's benediction, the demon then tried to put his hand on the Lord's head. Thus Shiva was frightened because of what he himself had done. Text 24. Teno pasrishta santrasta paradavansa venatu yavad antam divo bhume Kashtanam udagat udak. And the translation for text 24. As the demon pursued him, Lord Shiva fled swiftly from his abode in the north. Shaking with terror, he ran as far as the limits of the earth, the sky, and the corners of the universe. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamlam Shri Gurum Vaishnavansha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sargana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sargana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Shah Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapsa Kanchana Gorangi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimata Ramapada Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimata Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, for text, no purport, and the Acharyas also don't have. So we're going to look at this very much from a narrative point of view. So, Sukadev Goswami, he addresses King Parikshit. So, I'm going to read something of what he says about the three principal deities of the material world. So, he says, this is Sukadev Goswami, my dear king, Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva the principal trio of the material creation are able to bless or curse anyone. Of this trio, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are very easily satisfied, but also very easily angered. When satisfied, they give benedictions without consideration, and when angered, they curse the devotee without consideration. So this is a very important fact to bear in mind, something of how Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva function when approached for benedictions. So there's a contrast that's made with Lord Vishnu. This is Srila Prabhupada writing in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is what he says about Lord Vishnu. But Lord Vishnu is not like that. Lord Vishnu is very considerate. Whenever a devotee wants something from Lord Vishnu first considers whether such a benediction will ultimately be good for the devotee. Lord Vishnu never bestows a benediction which will ultimately prove disastrous to the devotee. So notice the big difference. There's, without any consideration, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva bestow a benediction. Lord Vishnu does not do that. He actually considers what will be the effect of the benediction upon the devotee. Will it be for the ultimate good of the devotee? And he won't actually give a benediction if it doesn't actually fulfill that purpose. So in the current scenario, as far as this topic of benedictions given by demigods like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma go, there's this particular historical incident which is cited by great sages. So here's the historical incident. Once, Lord Shiva, after giving a benediction to a demon named Vrikasura, the son of Shakuni, was himself entrapped in a very dangerous situation. The incident is narrated such that Vrikasura happened to meet the great sage Narada and consulted with him as to whom he should approach to achieve quick results from his austerity. So he inquired, this is Vrikasura, of the three deities, namely Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, who is most quickly satisfied? So Narada could understand the plan of the demon, and he advised him. This is Narada responding to this inquiry from Vrikasura. You had better worship Lord Shiva. Then you will quickly get the desired result. Lord Shiva is quickly satisfied and very quickly dissatisfied also. So Narada is giving this known fact. And he's responding to the demon Ari, his inquiry, which of the three deities will give the quickest results? And he's told Lord Shiva. And there's a reason too. Narada has some understanding of what the demon intends to do. So Srila Prabhupada writes like this. He says, Narada was aware of the nature of the demon, Vrikasura. So, when you're giving a response to some inquiry, you're going to consider who you're speaking to. So Srila Prabhupada says Narada was aware of the nature of the demon Vrikasura. He did not advise him to approach Vishnu or Lord Brahma. So, why was that basically? And this is what Srila Prabhupada says. Persons who are situated in the material mode of ignorance cannot stick to the worship of Lord Vishnu. So, because, you could even tell a very sinful person to start worshipping Lord Vishnu. But Narada's understanding, and this is Srila Prabhupada writing, a person in the mode of ignorance doesn't have the determination that will allow them to stick to the worship of Lord Vishnu, because you need a lot of determination to take up the worship of Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna. So this awareness of the nature of the demon, Vrikasura, has Narada also citing to Vrikasura certain instances when demons like Ravana and Banasura were enriched with great opulence simply by satisfying Lord Shiva with prayers. So he's giving encouragement to the demon. So Ravana also prayed to Lord Shiva. Banasura also prayed to Lord Shiva. So we can examine the nature of religious principles as related to the method of worship that's used. So in order to look at religious principles, we can go to how Yamaraj speaks about religious principles when he's having to explain to his messengers something of the Vishnu Dutas. So they're the Yamadutas. So this is how Yamaraj tries to explain religious principles. He says, real religious principles are enacted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although fully situated in the mode of goodness, even the great rishis who occupy the topmost planets cannot ascertain the real religious principles, nor can the demigods or the leaders of Siddhaloka, to say nothing of the asuras, the demons, or ordinary human beings, the Vidyaharas and the Charanas. So this is a very, very, very famous verse. So I'll read just 2 lines of the Sanskrit. Yamaraj talking about, how difficult it is for absolutely anybody to understand real religious principles, but that those real religious principles, they're coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the 2 lines from that is the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 3rd chapter, 19th verse. Dharmantu shakshan bhagavat panitam navai vitu rishayo napi deva. So one can ask, is it possible to sort out the means and the ends regarding worship? What means are you going to use? And what's your objective in doing worship? Because we're looking at religious principles. So if the end or the objective is something that's defined as the principles that are enacted in the Vedic scriptures, one would have to distinguish between real religious principles, which are above the 3 modes of nature, material nature, or transcendental religious principles. So the religious principles that are not above the 3 modes of nature, because you have to make that distinction right away if you want to understand religious principles. So the religious principles that are not above the 3 modes of material nature, so it means they're not transcendental to the 3 modes of nature, they have as their end. So the objective of those religious principles, which is usually some ritualistic ceremonies, their end, the objective, is to keep peace and order among materialistic persons. That's what the purpose is of ritualistic ceremonies and the religious principles that govern those ritualistic ceremonies. Now, materialistic persons who see this ritualistic means and put their faith in Vedic rituals, they're described in this way. So here's the description from Bhagavad Gita 2:42 to 43. So these are persons that are following religious principles that are within the modes of material nature. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say there is nothing more than this. So That's a description by Krishna. He's calling persons who follow these ritualistic activities as men of small knowledge. So they are, and he's acknowledging, Krishna's saying, they're looking for elevation to heavenly planets, they're looking for good birth, they're looking for power, etc. So these are all fall into the category of some sort of gratification of the senses. If you want everything to be comfortable and you want to be good looking, etc. And the persons who follow these religious principles, who want these ends, an opulent life, good birth in the future, power, they see that there's nothing more than this. So they're quite happy with following these religious principles with these ends in mind. So Srila Prabhupada puts it, people are generally most attracted to fruitive activities, meaning activities that are going to bear some fruit. You want a result from the activity that you perform, and that includes a religious activity. You want a result from it that's going to be beneficial to you, and this comes in the Karma Kanda portion of the Vedas. So Srila Prabhupada puts, using his words, due to their ignorance, those are his words, and not being very intelligent, Srila Prabhupada, they are choosing this objective, these religious principles which have as their objective power, opulent life, good birth, etc. Now, because of seeing the whole purpose of Vedic literature as being elevation to the heavenly planets where material opulence is very common, it's difficult for such persons to be situated in the determined action of Krishna consciousness. So because they're so caught up in these desires, they're not able to take up Krishna consciousness or the religious principles connected to Krishna consciousness, which requires determination and very determined action. They cannot do it. So that's how Srila Prabhupada explains it. So why I've gone into this is to explain why it is that Narada advised Brikashura to worship Lord Shiva for quick results. So you can see it's this kind of mentality, as opposed to saying to him, worship Lord Vishnu. Where's the determination? The person wants quick results, and that's how he posed his question to Narada. He wants to know, which deity must I worship to get very quick results? So this brings one to persons who undertake foolish penances. So usually the trio of deities, they are very easily satisfied. That's what we read, and they're very easily angered too. So they're going to respond with penances that their devotees undertake. So Hiranyakashipu took up a very foolish penance. He stood on one leg for an infinite stretch of time. I mean, even to the extent that, his body got eaten away by ants. So he wanted to become immortal. That was his end. So it's not even thinking of future good birth. He wants this birth to carry on infinitely. And his other objective was he wanted to kill the demigods. So he's performing his worship of the demigods in order to be able to kill them. So this is that statement of Srila Prabhupada, due to ignorance and not very good intelligence. So in his case, he prayed to Lord Brahma. Now, we're going to look at a particular description of Ravana undertaking an austerity with a particular end in mind. So here's another demon. So when he was born, he had a different name. It was given as Dasagriva. So he's described, very ugly, 10 heads, long teeth. Anyway, one day, so this is in his home, one day Lord Kuvera, Vaishravana, came to see his father, so related to Ravana, came to see his father Vishrava. So Vishrava was the father both of Kuvera and also of Ravana. So after Kaikashi, who's the mother of Ravana, saw him, meaning Kuvera, she urged her son Dasagriva, who's Ravana, to become as powerful and glorious as his half-brother. After hearing these words, Dasagriva became very envious of Kuvera and decided to become greater than him in all respects. With this in mind, Dasagriva, so Ravana, he went to Gokarna along with his younger brothers. Then he executed unprecedented austerities, and as a result, Lord Brahma became very pleased with him. And listen to the austerity. Here's the austerity. Dasagriva, so that's Ravana, he went without water for 10,000 years. 10,000 years drinking no water. And at the end of each 1,000 years, he offered one of his heads into the sacrificial fire. So imagine, he's actually not only depriving his body of water, but he's actually taking one of his 10 heads and he's offering it into the fire. So that's his particular austerity. And in fact, it was when Dasagriva or Kuvera was just about to offer his last head that Lord Brahma appeared before him to reward him for his austerities. And when Lord Brahma urged him to accept a benediction, Dasagriva replied in a voice that was choked with excessive joy. Finally, he's going to be able to ask for a benediction. So he's showing excessive joy. So he says to Lord Brahma, listen to his words. "O Lord, I have only one fear, and that is of death. Please grant me the boon of immortality." So that's what the benediction he wants. So Ravana, and of course the response of Lord Brahma is, I can't grant you immortality. So Ravana begs, grant me immunity from death at the hands of Nagas, Daityas, Danavas, Rakshasas, and demigods. Because I do not require immunity from others, like human beings and animals, for I consider them to be no more a threat than straw in the street. So he thought, well, at least if he covers all the categories of living beings, and he receives a benediction that he's not going to die at the hands of this category, that category, that category, and that category of being, he should be pretty safe. He won't put the category of human beings or animals because, they're nothing. They're not a threat to him. So that's how he urges Lord Brahma. So Lord Brahma says, I can't give you immortality. So then, he uses his intelligence, Ravana. So he says, well, at least I can't receive death from this category of being, this category of being, this category of being. So, he's got it covered. So Lord Brahma granted all this. And he also restored Dasagriva's heads. So that's the extraordinary benediction. Not only did Ravana, or Dasagriva as he was known then, get his benediction fulfilled by Lord Brahma, but Lord Brahma also restored his 9 heads that he had put into the fire. And then he told Vibhishan, so that's a brother of Ravana who was with him. So he asked Vibhishan, what boon would you like? And this is how Vibhishan responds. So look at his response. Because Brahma says to him, you may also accept benediction according to your desire. And here's Vibhishan's response. My dear Lord, since you are pleased with me, the goal of my life has already been achieved. My only wish is that my mind may always remain already steadily fixed. So that's all he wants. He wants his mind to remain steady. See the difference? So it's like going back to that initial distinction of, how the demigods provide are easily pleased, and Lord Vishnu is not so. And the worshipper of the demigods, you can see how there's a request for something that has to do with some materialistic desire. So in the case of Ravana, perhaps you could say it's a little more subtle, asking for immortality, but it's basically asking for the physical body to not end, the particular one he's inhabiting. And in the case of his brother, all he wants is for his mind to remain steadily fixed on Lord Vishnu. So, and this is, I drew this from Ramayana from Purna Pragya Prabhu, who writes about this. So in the case of Rikasura, because that's who we're looking at today, he went to Kedarnath, so in the Himalayas, and he ignited a sacrificial fire, because usually you have to have a fire in order to provide something, food stuff or something to feed the demigod. So we've just been hearing how Ravana was actually putting heads into the sacrificial fire. So after igniting the fire in the name of Lord Shiva, so Vrikasura, to please Lord Shiva, he began to offer his own flesh, so by cutting it from his body. So this was, his means of offering. And Srila Prabhupada puts it this way. These are Srila Prabhupada's words. Here is an instance of worship in the mode of ignorance. And Lord Krishna, he gives a definition. So this is to understand what is worship in the mode of ignorance. So here's Krishna's definition. It's from Bhagavad Gita 17:19. Penance performed out of foolishness, with self-torture, or to destroy or injure others, is said to be in the mode of ignorance. So you undertake something difficult. It's actually torturous to yourself, and is meant to destroy or injure others. That's penance in the mode of ignorance. So by way of reinforcing the contrast between the two kinds of worship, the transcendental versus worship within the modes, the ultimate austerity or tapasya is Krishna consciousness. And this is because the means one is using, the austerity one's using if one's performing Krishna consciousness, is of always thinking of Lord Krishna. See what a subtle austerity it is. It's keeping Krishna within one's mind, within one's heart. And it's the topmost sacrifice, or the means. And the topmost sacrifice and the means to achieve this end of thinking of Krishna always is to perform the Sankirtan Yagya. You're chanting the names of Krishna. So that's the austerity if you're actually worshipping Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna. So completely different means with a different objective. The objective is just to keep Lord Krishna within one's heart, and the means is to perform the Sankirtan Yagya. So Srila Prabhupada, he gives an objective to describe the sacrifice of Vrikasura, because we're looking at somebody who's worshipping in the modes of nature. So this is what Srila Prabhupada says about the objective, that Vrikasura, because you have to have an end in mind. So the Krishna conscious person, the end in mind is to have Krishna within one's heart, to always be able to think of him. And for Vrikasura, this is how his objective, and Srila Prabhupada puts it this way. Vrikasura wanted to satisfy Lord Shiva for a third-class materialistic objective, which was temporary and without real benefit. So he's putting it nicely. It's just not a very beneficial end result. It's very temporary. And we'll come to hear in a minute what that is. So by way of contrast, the worship of Lord Vishnu is very simple. He accepts from his devotees even a little water, a fruit, a flower, which can be gathered by any person, rich or poor. And Srila Prabhupada reiterates, worship in the mode of ignorance as exhibited by Krsnarcana, remember he's offering pieces of his own flesh, is not only very difficult and painful, but it's also a useless waste of time. This is Srila Prabhupada. So, Lord Shiva, he actually came and he saved Vrikasura, this demon, from committing suicide, because after he had been chopping away at his body, his next step was to, take a chopper and chop off his head. So how he was going to benefit. But Lord Shiva intervened at that precise moment. And the bodily injuries were immediately healed, just like we heard that Lord Brahma, he restored the heads of Ravana, or Dasagriva as he was known then. Same thing, Lord Shiva immediately healed the bodily injuries of Vrikasura, and his body came back to its original complete whole as it was before he began his chopping to offering to the sacrificial fire the flesh. And Lord Shiva says to him, you may ask of me any benediction you like, and I shall fulfill your desire. And Lord Shiva says to him, I do not know why you wanted to cut off your head to satisfy me. I become satisfied by even an offering of a little water. And when the demon was offered this facility that he could ask for any benediction by Lord Shiva, he asked for a fearful and abominable benediction. And remember Lord Krishna's definition of performing penance in the mode of ignorance. It's actually always going to be to injure others, and of course it's also the self-torture which we just heard about, but it's to injure others. And here is his fearful and abominable benediction that he asked for. And Srila Prabhupada states, this is Srila Prabhupada's words, the demon was very sinful. And sinful persons do not know what sort of benediction should be asked of the deity. I'm pausing for a minute. This may all seem very extraordinary, but it's not so extraordinary in one sense, because there was an example I came across in contemporary life. A person, somewhat demoniac mentality, I came to understand, asked another person, please push me into Lake Michigan so that I can drown. So the person, because I want a better body. So it's not unusual for a demoniac person to actually, want to do something torturous or terrible or suicidal, and even harm another person. Imagine requesting somebody to perform that action for you. So injurious to another person too. I mean, even the thought of doing something like that. So it's not unusual, even in our contemporary society, this happens. So, and this is then what Vrikasura did. He asked Lord Shiva to bless him with such power that as soon as he would touch anyone's head, it would immediately crack. And the man would die. That's the benediction he asked for. So Lord Krishna describes the activity of demoniac persons, because we try to understand this mentality. And this is how Lord Krishna puts it. Following such conclusions, because he's adding to what he just said earlier, and the conclusion was that that the demoniac person's mentality, he considers the world to be unreal. There's no God in control, and it just comes from sex desire. That's all there is to the world. It's not real, no God in control. It's all the result of sex desire. That's what you see. So Krishna puts it, following such conclusions, these that I've just said, because it comes from a previous verse, the demoniac who are lost to themselves and who have no intelligence engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. So this is Lord Krishna's definition of what are the activities of demoniac persons. They engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. And Vrikasura, instead of asking Lord Shiva, and that was from Bhagavad Gita 69, and Vrikasura, instead of asking Lord Shiva for something that's beneficial to human society, he asked for something that's dangerous to human society. And this is the judgment that's given by Srila Prabhupada. The demon wanted to become immortal by killing everyone with the touch of his hand. I mean, what logic is that? I mean, you can laugh, but this is the demoniac mentality. So I'm trying to paint a picture. And, in the past when I would read this, I could sort of objectively, theoretically see it. But it's actually, I even got exposed as I just gave the example. It's actually exists. Persons are so demoniac. So this demon wanted to become immortal by killing everyone with the touch of his hand. And Srila Prabhupada writes, he, Lord Shiva, could not withdraw his promise, but he was very, very sorry in his heart that he was to offer him a benediction so dangerous to human society. So there's Srila Prabhupada saying what Lord Shiva was feeling. He was very, very sorry that he had to give this benediction that was going to be dangerous to human society. The demon, being very sinful, immediately decided that he would use the benediction to kill Lord Shiva. So imagine the hardness of heart. You've received a benediction, according to your mentality, it's what you wanted. And then you decide to use it against the very entity who gave you that benediction. So this is what Vrikasura was doing. Not only did he decide that he would use the benediction to kill Lord Shiva, but Srila Prabhupada says that he decided also he was going to take away Parvati for his own enjoyment. So he immediately decided to put his hand on Lord Shiva's head. So these were the verses we were reading today. Thus, Lord Shiva was put into a very awkward position because he was endangered by his own benediction to a demon. And this is Srila Prabhupada's conclusion. This is an instance of a materialistic devotee misusing the power derived from the demigods. So that's the conclusion. So without further deliberation, the demon approached Lord Shiva. Now he didn't think about what's going to be the consequence, what will be the result of this, nothing. Without further deliberation, he immediately approached Lord Shiva to place his hand on Lord Shiva's head. And Lord Shiva was so afraid of him that his body trembled. And he fled from the land to the sky and from the sky to other planets until he reached the limits of the universe above the higher planetary system. So he's escaping even the higher planetary system, that's his residence. So Lord Shiva fled from one place to another, but the demon continued to chase him. So I'm ending on that note. So if there's any thoughts on this subject matter.
Yeah, it's quite a subject matter that at times is difficult to understand. because of the exalted position, the powerful position of both Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. And you begin the class by pointing out, reading from Srila Prabhupada, that both Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma will grant benedictions that are, able to grant these benedictions that are for materialistic purposes. And they're very easily pleased and then, grant these benedictions. Different from Lord Vishnu, who discriminate, is this makes sense to give this benediction. So he won't necessarily, what it means, that he won't necessarily give the benediction if it's something that is going to cause harm to the person or to anyone like that. So, so one's wonder, why these two personalities who are both, not only controllers of the universe, but also they are Mahayans. They're those who have perfect understanding of the principles of religion. How can they allow something like that? Thinking on that, in the class that I gave last week, I thought, about that subject matter of it seems like the system is built like that and they're obliged. And in one sense, we know that Lord Vishnu is the maintainer. So in one sense, Lord Vishnu is there to correct these how you say, anomalies that comes in the process of using the system of religion for demoniac purposes. So Lord Vishnu comes and eliminates those anomalies, like that. So it seems that is the system. And on the other hand, you have both Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva giving benedictions or giving directions to devotees too. And they all are led to connecting with Krishna. So in the case of Lord Brahma, he gave benedictions to Narada and properly instructed Narada in the means of actually how to properly understand Lord Krishna. And Lord Shiva instructed the Prachetas and Parvati and so many like that as devotees. So they do that too. So I was just thinking that this question of who comes to ask benedictions and why the end goal you pointed out, reading from Srila Prabhupada, the desire to be fulfilled by people that are materialistic is some type of materialistic. They're not really looking for, they're not really looking to satisfy Lord Vishnu, by the sacrifice or by the tapasya. They're looking to actually gain some material power and they're opposed. Demoniac are rejecting of Lord Vishnu or God. They're just using the system to obtain what they want. Now you have different situations of materialistic devotees worshipping Lord Vishnu and performing tapasya for that. And the biggest example in the Bhagavatam is Dhruva Maharaj, who wanted, a materialistic end to his desires. But because he was directed first by his mother and then instructed by Narada Muni how to obtain his desire by satisfying Lord Vishnu. So his focus was also, he wanted to satisfy Lord Vishnu. And Narada gave him the means to satisfy Lord Vishnu, is that not just performing the austerities and the tapasya, but chanting the holy name, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So he was chanting this mantra, and by chanting the mantra, he became purified. So, and through the purification, then, so the motive was to connect to Krishna. So we have those situations too. There's tapasya that is performed, but is performed for the purpose of satisfying Lord Vishnu. And sometimes those tapasyas may look similar to a tapasya of Hiranyakashipu. I mean, Dhruva was standing on his tips with the arms stretched like that for thousands of years. But the purpose was, he was chanting, and the purpose was to being able to satisfy Lord Vishnu. So there is in one sense, I'm making all this comment just, thinking in the class that you gave, is how this whole system is built, that at the end really is one have to be directed regardless of if you want to fulfill your material desires, well, do it. The direction is you worship Lord Vishnu. And the fact is that at the end, you're not only going to have what you need, but you're also going to go back, you purify yourself, go back home, back to Godhead. That's the system that is there. And otherwise, anything else can create, is vulnerable to all these anomalies, So.
Oh, that's a very nice further examination, and giving the example of Dhruva Maharaj, who wasn't of a demoniac mentality, but had a super materialistic end in mind. But the materialistic end in mind was combined with the desire to satisfy Lord Vishnu, and he was using the correct means too. Even though he was using the materialistic means of the austerity, the physical austerity, the fact that he was also using the means that is given for satisfying Lord Vishnu, the chanting of the mantra, was allowing for that purification. So it was almost like somebody working simultaneously in the two systems, but the mentality was the correct one, because there was the desire to worship Lord Vishnu. So, yeah, it's... I mean, so interesting you brought up that example of somebody who straddled both, what would one say, both kinds of worship. It would appear that it's materialistic worship and there's transcendental worship. So very interesting. Thank you very much for bringing that up.
When also Valmiki was eaten by the ants too. He was covered by an anthill, not eaten, but he was covered by an anthill. But he was chanting Rama. That's the trick. Narada Muni will have all this. So, Narada Muni gives these benedictions, but I once wonder why Lord Brahman, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva don't. And it's because the quality of the worshipper, they're demoniac. Yes. And they have they're anomalies that are using the system.
Yes, exactly. And because I tried to examine that point through looking at the subject matter, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, they understand when the worshipper doesn't have the necessary determination. That was the factor that was highlighted. They don't have the determination that would allow them to worship Lord Vishnu. So by implication, it means somebody like Dhruva Maharaj, he had that determination too.
Narada tested him.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your class, Montaji. I was thinking about the context of what you were speaking about, how sometimes devotees come to the Lord for material benedictions or material things, and I'm thinking how there's like the four types of devotees that approach the Lord, but in one sense they're considered Mahatmas. In one sense, just by approaching the Lord, it seems that it's better to approach the Lord and get the purification than to be averse from a certain thing and get the understanding. Because if a person's averse, has a desire, and they don't actually, if they're averse to it, it seems like they won't get the lessons that they need. But if they approach the Lord for that material thing, at least they'll be in the process of purification, rather than seems like a lot of people just don't want to be a part of the movement because they think it's so austere. But it seems like it's better to have certain things, amenities, whatever you need to stay in service, rather than go away from it. Because eventually, if you approach Lord Vishnu for whatever, he'll make sure you're ready for it before you actually receive it. And then by the time you receive it, you won't want it anymore. So.
Yeah, so your comment was that it's actually still better for somebody who has some material motive to be coming to Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu, because by virtue of doing that, there's still the possibility of purification. So I was highlighting that there's a means for getting purification. So the means is engaging in Sankirtan. That's the sacrifice, because you have to perform some sacrifice. So approaching means you're performing a sacrifice. And the sacrifice that is for worship of Lord Vishnu is the Sankirtan Yajna. So the person has to engage in that. So it's not just a matter of exposure to the deities has purification. So somebody may be coming to the deities with material requests, and they may be negative material requests. They may not be the right ones. Somebody of a demoniac mentality may still think, oh, the deity can satisfy my desire, so they may be making demoniac requests. I want this, and somebody else who has a broad understanding will understand that that's a bizarre request. But a demoniac mind mentality, as I've tried to highlight, is always it's intent on harming and injuring others. So certainly some purification comes by, coming to the deities, but the means for worship of Lord Krishna is the Sankirtan Yajna. The person has to engage in that. That's the sacrifice. Yeah. Thank you.
This is the most suspenseful class. Like, I have a question. Did the demon ever caught the Lord Shiva and put the hand on his head? Did they ever caught the demon who got the benediction when he puts the hand on somebody's head that dies? Like, did he ever caught up with the Lord Shiva?
Did he manage to touch Lord Shiva?
Yeah.
We're going to read, of course, one never wants to take away from the next person's class, but we're going to hear how, which is the great good fortune, and it's been emerging throughout this section, that Lord Vishnu steps in to take care of the problem that's been created by the demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva being so easily pleased and being so willing to grant a benediction, and even to a demoniac person with a demoniac mentality who's always making a benediction that's bound to want to injure somebody others and is unbeneficial to the whole of human society. Lord Vishnu has to step in and somehow solve the problem. So what we're going to hear is how Lord Vishnu has that benediction get used in a way that eliminates the demon. Let me put it that way, because I don't want to take away from somebody else's class. But Lord Vishnu solves the problem, and that demon does get to use that benediction, but in a way that puts an end to everything. I'm going to stop there. I won't give away the exciting part. Lord Vishnu solves the problem in such a way that all the demigods shower flowers on Lord Vishnu. So I'm going to leave the little mystery there. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.